Episode 1 of Season 3 of House of the Dragon explained. We're going to dive into the lore, the meaning behind the scenes, and how they may differ from the books. Let's get into it. Starting off the least controversial change in the show, Rhaena and the Vale taming Sheep Stealer. This is a great one for us to start off on and explain. In the show, Rhaena has taken the role of a character called Nettles. The timeline has also become a little wonky because of them. Sheep Stealer, the dragon being tamed, was originally part of the initial sowing of the dragon seeds. In episode 7 of season 2, Rhaenyra sort of just chucks a bunch of these Targaryen bastards at the dragons to see if they could tame them. It's pretty insane. In the books, it was a different approach. The dragons roam on Dragonstone or live in caves, and you have all these dragon seeds trying their luck with different dragons. Nettles stands out because instead of having the traditional Targaryen look of a silvery white hair and violet eyes, she's a short black girl without a hint of Targaryen or Valyrian blood in her. Sheep Stealer is also quirky for a dragon. He's around 70 years old and was never claimed by a dragon rider before, so as time goes by, it makes it harder and harder to tame him. The dragon seeds try all sorts to tame dragons, but Nettles uses her wits. She knows Sheep Stealer loves sheep, and instead of Sheep Stealer having to roam the lands to find his food, Nettles would deliver him freshly slaughtered sheep in the mornings until he grew accustomed to her and allowed her to ride him. This is a massive deal because it breaks the illusion of the Targaryen hold on dragons. We don't know everything about Nettles and her bloodlines, but if she doesn't have a lick of Targaryen blood in her, it blows the doors open on who can and can't claim a dragon, and the monopolization that the Targs hold over that could really break. Rhaena, on the other hand, spends most of the dance as a rather inconsequential character. She doesn't have a dragon, so is of no use on the battlefield, and is sort of Joffrey Valerian's babysitter as they are sent to Goretown in the Vale to protect it, but also put distance between them and any imminent danger. Speaking of heirs, the current line of succession for the Team Black is as follows. Rhaenyra is the queen, her heir is Jacaerys, followed by Joffrey, Aegon, and Viserys. Would have to pass through each of these four boys and their descendants first to then move across to a different line. By the end of this episode, Joffrey is the last remaining son of Laenor Velaryon, or Harwin, with Aegon and Viserys being of Daemon and Rhaenyra's marriage. In the show, Joffrey, Aegon and Viserys were last seen in the Vale, whilst in the books only Rhaena and Joffrey were sent there, with Aegon and Viserys being sent to Pentos in Essos for protection instead. The show has all of this brood being kept together. Well, apart from Rhaena, who's ditched her one duty to go gallivanting in the Vale on Sheep Stealer, the reason they are sent to Pentos is because Daemon had good relations with the Magister and the people, and they loved the idea of harbouring a future dragon rider. If they ever run into trouble, it's a great tool to whip out and scare off the enemy. It's also a smart move in general to keep the line of succession spread out, so if one is captured, they aren't all captured at once. Over in the Crownlands, Larys and Aegon continue their flight from King's Landing. Aegon is currently suffering from withdrawal from Milk the Puppy. Think of it as something akin to morphine, and because of all of Aegon's been through, he's sort of hooked on it. But now he's going through withdrawal, he's going to have a tough time ahead. Their escape is short-lived though, as they are pulled over by loyalists to Rhaenyra. Judging by their sigil, they are men belonging to House Staunton. House Staunton's seat is Rook's Rest, the castle that was the setting for the epic dragon encounter of episode 4 of season 2 between Aegon, Aemond and Rhaenys. Aegon's identity is soon revealed as he refuses to bend the knee to Rhaenyra, even if it means saving his life. Larys tells the Staunton soldiers that Aegon and himself would be worth a valuable ransom to Rhaenyra and they should be delivered accordingly.
Who are they then?
No one of consequence.
It's the Jaime Lannister situation all over again, where a valuable hostage can be worth a lot of gold to people depending on which side they go with. They mention the fastest route to Dragonstone, Rhaenyra's base of operations, will be the port of Duskendale. We can then assume that Rook's Rest and Duskendale, which fell to Criston Cole in Season 2, has been reacquired by Team Black, so a lot of Green's gains have been wiped off the board. You might ask, why are Larys and Aegon heading north instead of south? Well, Sunfire, who we last heard of was Lung in the Dying, is still in the Rook's Rest area, being too big to transport and just sort of left there. So Aegon could be attempting to regain his power by reuniting with Sunfire. Remember, dragons are the epitome of power in Westeros, and not having one can hurt your claim. One additional note and change is when Aegon fled King's Landing, he was not the only one. Larys organised for Jaehaera and Maelor to be escorted from King's Landing to the Reach and Storm's lands respectively. Like previously mentioned, it stops the line of succession from being in crisis if they are all found together. They still have a figurehead to fight behind and crown. Maelor currently isn't in this adaptation though, and Jaehaera is still present in King's Landing. I think. I've not seen her since last season, so who knows. In King's Landing, Aemond's having a meltdown because Big Bro Aegon has done a runner and he's trying to figure out who in the small council has helped him escape. He threatens Master Orwyle before Lord Jasper Wilde, the Master of Laws, intervenes. Alicent then returns to enact her plan to allow Rhaenyra to take the city with as little bloodshed as possible. It's a little funky here. Aemond has assumed the position of king, looking at Aegon fleeing as an abdication of his throne and thus Aemond inherits. The Kingsguard also acknowledge him as such. Compared to the books where he is known as Prince Regent and Lord Protector, he's actively being referred to as King.
The king requires an audience.
Alicent conspires to get Aemond out of the city, but it was far easier in the books because he's been with Criston Cole for a while now. Book and show Alicent are two completely different characters at this point, and her plan to have Aemond and Aegon flee the city for a bloodless takeover isn't something she would stomach. Alicent is a huge driving force in starting the war, and she owns it. It's not a case of mistaken prophecy, it's a case of I want my kid on the throne, he's a son and should thus inherit over a daughter. Aemond himself wants to go to Harrenhal and conjures up a plan to envelop Daemon with the Lannisters from the west. The council actually plead with him to wait for Ormund Hightower, Daeron and Boros Baratheon's men to arrive before executing such a plan, but Aemond's rash and a little arrogant and doesn't want to share the glory. He thinks he's got all the tools required to take down Daemon at Harrenhal, as Vhagar is noted to be twice the size of Caraxes. Which means him kissing Alicent doesn't happen. I'm assuming he saw Daemon sleeping with his own mother in Harrenhal and wanted to one-up him. Over in the Riverlands, well, I made a video sort of explaining the Battle of the Gullet and the Riverlands in more detail, which includes the changes to the book, but basically Daemon doesn't really partake in many of the Riverlands battles featured in this season. In fact, he hears of Aemond's intention to take Harrenhal and decides to skedaddle and get the hell out of here, and comes up with his own plans of what he's going to do next when Aemond finds Daemon is not where he should be. Further south, we finally get our first introduction to Ormund Hightower, the current lord of Old Town and head of 15,000 man strong army currently making its way up the Manda. The Manda is basically a huge river in the Reach, so we can roughly guess they are closer to the tip of the river based on Aemond's estimation they are days away. The establishing shots show us the scale of the Hightower army and its organisation in comparison to Criston Cole's current ragtag, ill-disciplined squad. It helps establish that Ormond is a threat. We also get a nice close-up of Tessarion, Daeron Targaryen's dragon, who we have yet to see. Alongside Ormond is Jon Roxton. He's Ormond's second in command and he carries the Valyrian steel sword, Orphan Maker. That's a pretty cool name in my opinion. For a short moment though, I just want to geek out over the armour. I really love the detail. I assume these four fellows are sworn to House Roxton as they have blue detailing with chains, much like the Roxton sigil. Ormond's armour is what really shines though, with the Tower of Old Town at the centre, surrounded by what I assume are the Gods of the Seven. You could almost view this as blasphemous, as the Hightower sigil is the centrepiece with the gods facing towards it. Now, time for a little bit of history. Old Town, which is the seat of House Hightower, is the second largest city in Westeros after King's Landing, and it holds the Citadel, which is the home of the Maesters, and also the Starry Sept. The High Septon in Westeros once resided at the Starry Sept. Think of it as like the Vatican, the central location of religion, ironically next door to the central location of knowledge. When Aegon I began his conquest in Westeros, he came to Old Town, where the High Septon had a vision that if they refused, then Old Town and the Starry Sept would burn. so they bent the knee to Aegon and anointed him Lord of the Seven Kingdoms within the Starry Sept. It was a huge factor for Aegon as it brought the biggest religion in Westeros to his side. From a wider perspective, you can see the High Towers as having control of Old Town, with its Sept and Citadel as being able to control the flow of knowledge and religion throughout Westeros. As time goes on though, the High Septon moves his residence from the Starry Sept to the Sept of Baelor in King's Landing, but that's still a century away. Anyway, Ormund was discussing something with his squire before reading Alicent's forged letter from Aemond. The man definitely doesn't like being out in the field because he's repulsed by the smell of the messenger and has his little sniffing salts ready to try and clear those airwaves. He also seems rather callous as he shows little reaction or care to the fact that Aemond is now king and Aegon is dead.
One king is as good as another.
He then orders his squire to have the messenger cleaned up so at least he has some hospitality, but it also shows their standards that he expects the army to maintain, unlike Kristen Kurt's attitude in the Riverlands. Anyway, Alicent's message is the reason Signet's rings exist. Moving back to the Riverlands, at the God's Eye are dragon riders Ulf, Hugh and Adam. This was actually the weirdest part of the episode for me as we get the reappearance of the Black Goats. I initially thought this was a nod to Vargo Hope, but there's a god in Cohor which is a black goat and he loves a blood sacrifice. But then that's followed up by this guy. I think Mr. Tumnus must have wondered out the wrong wardrobe? This fella is a green man. One of them was featured in the blink and you miss it moment in season 2 during Daemon's prophecy. The green men are a sacred order based on the Isle of Faces. The first men and the children of the forest agreed to peace terms on the Isle of Faces, and each tree had a face carved into it as a witness. The green men were created to protect the island. It's one of the more mystical elements of George's world, and it was actually a surprise to see them featured here. It just really hammers home how mystical and eerie Harrenhal is, and the Isle of Faces and Harrenhal is a setting I think they have absolutely nailed in the show. Then we get the reappearance of Alice Rivers, who must have teleported onto the island or rowed a boat, but she confesses she's a witch, and well, everyone takes it well.
Right, look after yourselves.
One thing to note though is Ulf's displeasure of only being granted a knighthood. The man's lived a long hard life and finally wants his rewards. The idea of a knighthood is the unfunniest of jokes to him considering.
What do I need with a fucking horse? I've got a dragon.
We do get some insight into Ulf's history though, where he talks about how he was sort of a prostitute for a red priest in Essos. Those red priests can sniff out king's blood like a bloodhound apparently. This is likely to be a bone of contention because really, these dragon riders' ties to Rhaenyra are thin at most. She's going to have to dish out some rewards to keep these guys on side because blood ties aren't exactly a strong bond in this world. I don't hate the idea of these 3 dragon riders being at Harrenhal to ambush Aemond. It's just a bit weird that they should be at Dragonstone during the Battle of the Gullet. In fact, this sort of flies in the face of Daemon's plans by having dragon riders waiting to ambush Aemond. But tactically, if one of the 3 could take down Aemond, it's no real loss to Rhaenyra. She's not got a strong bond with any of them. Moving across to Dragonstone and the Gullet. Again, I covered a lot of this in detail in the video here. There are some major changes about how Jace is made aware of this impending attack, but I'm not going to go into that in case that becomes a plot point later on. What was interesting was the Kingsguard acquiescing Jace's request to hold Rhaenyra in her chambers for the battle. This has been building up for the past few seasons, and it's nice to see Jace get a few moments to really own things. The show sort of robbed him of a couple of his ideas, such as sending away his brothers and also the idea of the dragon seeds. I think this harmed him in a way that made him seem more pouty in trying to get his mother's approval and be taken more seriously, but it robbed him of some of his character's best and pivotal ideas.
I'm not pouty.
Rhaenyra in the books doesn't partake in the Battle of the Gullet because she doesn't need to. They have a host of 4 to 5 dragons that are set on the attacking Triarchy fleet, and after what happened to Aegon at Rook's Rest, it's paramount that she's protected at all costs, and hell, it looks like it was a good idea. If Jace did in fact keep his mom locked up on Dragonstone, it makes you wonder why nobody else bloody did this, especially during Aerys' the second time as king. That would have solved quite a few problems. Moving on, I do love how they give Corlys his time to shine. In the books, he's renowned for being one of the finest sailors of all time, and him navigating the route through Dragonstone was a great nod to that. Corlys effectively grew House Velaryon into the powerhouse it is by sailing through the world and building trade routes and benefiting from those riches. So him seeing Spicetown and High Tide go up in flames is akin to him seeing his legacy go up in flames. And we know as an audience how important that legacy is to him throughout the show. In regards to who won the Battle of the Gullet, it's a tricky situation. If you're Team Green, you can claim that you've been playing with house money. The Triarchy fleet wasn't your fleet, so it's no big loss to you, and they managed to take down a dragon and be heir to Dragonstone, so you've done damage without losing much. However, the whole aim of the Triarchy fleet was to break the blockade on King's Landing, so the Blacks could also own a victory and say, we still maintain our fleet and the blockade of King's Landing, which means you're starving still. But it's a coin toss really. No side come out of this unbloodied, and the Velaryon fleet lost between 25% and a third of its power, so it's a big L for Corlys Velaryon at least. If you liked this, feel free to check out our other videos such as the power-based ones we did explaining Rhaenyra's and Aegon's armies.